What is going on, everybody? Hello, Tim McKay. Evening to you as well, sir. Tonight, I am joined. I think I took a couple weeks off from the live chats. I got a little burnt out there. I did a bunch, like 4 months back to back. But I got Mike Mollman. We tried to do it. It was like 3 weeks ago. We tried to do it, and the technology wasn't on our side. So we are back trying it again. You can see I got the sweet heart thing behind me. That's my wife's jewelry thing. I'm not in the garage because it's getting too hot in the garage to film, so I don't have my sweet backdrop anymore. So all my live streams are going to be my bed. That's the bathroom door to my bedroom, but it is what it is. But anyway, yes, Mike Mollman is my guest tonight, and he is kind of a, as far as I can tell from looking at his Amazon lineup, a prolific. Last time I said that word, I said prophetic. You are a prolific independent writer. So it looks like you have the Children of Mars series, which you just have one book in that series, right?
The second one is coming out in September.
Okay. And then the Protector of Pretanni and the Proxima Station, which is about to release book one.
Correct. Because I like to start series. I don't like to finish them.
Yeah. How many do you have in the Protector series?
The Protectors is going to be 7 books. I've got 4 written, and I needed a break, so I started on doing a sci-fi book, and I've been on sci-fi for a year and a half now, and I really need to get back to Pretanni.
Yeah.
I kind of got burning out on sci-fi. Let's go back to fantasy. So, but yeah, now I have 3 series up in the air that I will be juggling. So
yeah, but I think that's a good strategy though. Like I feel like I always bring up Larry Correia is like my favorite author, so I always bring him up. But he kind of has a similar strategy. Like Monster Hunter is his his main line, his flagship series, whatever. But he also jumps around a bunch because you don't want to get burnt out just writing the same genre, same story over and over again. So I think, and it makes sense. Like the strategy to kind of keep your work fresh, keep yourself fresh, sharpen your saw, whatever. I like the strategy.
Sorry, just putting my phone on Do Not Disturb.
You're good.
I've had my brothers call me during live streams, and then when I don't answer, they call again because.
Yeah, I just realized I forgot to bar the door, so if my kids might run in, hopefully they don't. But if they do, whatever, no big deal. Yeah, I guess I don't know how many you want to talk about. All I'm kind of interested in all your series kind of fit, at least like I assume they do, into kind of like what my niche is. Like I like middle sci-fi, middle fantasy, basically anything fantasy. Maybe not cozy fantasy. That's not really. I can't imagine that's up my alley. I guess you never know. I don't want to write it off without trying it, but. Like on my book club, I title it Carbines and Cantrips. So basically something in that vein where there's like action-y, bullets and spells, whatever. So as Children of Mars, like what kind of sci-fi story is that?
That's dystopian. Mm-hmm. Ta-da! There you go. Have it. It's set about 200 years in the future, and Earth has fallen into chaos, and Mars was never really supposed to be able to feed itself. And the government was really the UN. So when the Earth falls, you got 48 city-states that will do anything other than cooperate. Cooperate is always the last choice. So there you have a father and son. They have a spaceship. They transport people, goods, illicit substances when they have to pay the bills between the cities. Father goes into port, doesn't come back out. Police come out to tell him he's been murdered. Chris is left on his own to figure out how to survive in a world that just doesn't care about you. And then he realizes no one's really looking into Dad's death. So he decides, I guess I'll take that on myself too. Mm. And he's a smart kid, but he's 17 and sheltered. So he doesn't have a lot of choices in his toolbox. So it's kind of like, there's a problem. There, got rid of it. I mean, that is, his go-to solution. So he has to kind of learn, one, to play nice with others, maybe make a friend, and then, figure out through the underworld who killed his father and get revenge. Yeah, it's 3 steps backwards, 1 step forward sort of thing.
Yeah. Have you read Theft of Fire? Because it doesn't sound the same, but genre or theme style kind of reminds me of that.
I have not. I will tell you, I've had 4 people now tell me that it reminds them of Red Rising. Mm-hmm. I tried.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I tried. I tried to read that once, and I was like, God, I hate this. And I've had 4 people now tell me that my book reminds them of Red. I'm like, oh God.
Oh no.
But then
I'm
they're
not
like,
familiar with
well,
that book.
oh, I forget the guy's name. The main character's an ass. Which and I was like, I don't like. I want the main character to die, So
Yeah.
I stopped reading it. But then someone told me it's really slow the first 20%. I'm like, well, I DNF really fast, so I probably never got past that 20%. So
Yeah.
I'll probably have to give it another try because I mean, people are like, do you mean the first book? The first book's not great, but the trilogy is what? I'm like, I have to read a whole book before it gets good.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, I am 54 years old, people. I don't have time for that.
That's a hard sell.
Next year, I tell me to read The Wheel of Time or something crazy. So it's very much dystopian. It's probably the darkest thing I've written.
Yeah.
Haley Traveler. And then in Pretanni, the main character is Grommy. He's a druid. He's 20. He's really powerful, but he's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And most of it is him trying to get out of his own way because half the problems are his own creation, and then he has to, take 3 steps back and figure out what to do now. So, yeah. I like people who are like just on the cusp of being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And what do you do? And and they always have that dogged determination. They're going to see it through, even if it doesn't make sense. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what my characters are like.
I mean, I think I like those kind of characters. I mean, I like really competent characters too, but it's different it's different flavor, I guess. Because with the competent characters, you really have to like throw crazy stuff at them to make it interesting. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've read so many books where the main character solves every problem and everyone else around him is just like, I will screw up now so you can be the hero. And that's just boring.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, ditch everyone else and then you won't have any problems and you can just waltz up and, win. I don't know. I will tell you the number one compliment that I got that I absolutely will hang my hat on is Bengus Khan, Books with Bengus. He's like, when I'm reading Mike's book, I never know what's going to happen next. And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
that is what I want.
Yeah, it's definitely that's something I like as a reader. I like sometimes getting like little Easter eggs or clues and stuff like that. But definitely, if the author can surprise me or keep me guessing, that's definitely something I enjoy. Tim McKay says, "Read The Wheel of Time, Mike."
No, hell, I'm still on the fence about his book. So I told him he says 578 pages. I said, unless it has 78 pictures, I'm probably not reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a real big book guy. If I do read a big book, I usually read half of it and then I stop and read a couple regular sized books and then I go back and finish the second half.
So Tim is trying to fool me into saying it's really 3 books compressed into one. So it's not 578 pages. It's 3 200-page books.
Yeah. Are all your protagonists kind of like younger guys and maybe a little like naive and stuff?
So Chris definitely is. He's so wildly sheltered. Oh, I'm just like, oh God, you have so much to learn. I feel bad for you. I literally felt I'm like, if you were a real person, I wouldn't be able to look you in the eye for what I put you through. Grommy, he's older. He's 20. He just kind of has a temper. Got into fights with his previous 2 mentors and got kicked out. And this is his last chance. And yeah, like I said, he's just more dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Chris hasn't seen the world yet and doesn't know how to function. The new series Proxima Centauri, the guy is actually like 28 years old, so he's actually a competent adult. But that's going to be contact where humans get invited to a space station where there's 5 spacefaring races, and he's an anthropologist who's sent there to tell us what these aliens are like and how we can steal their tech and them not get mad.
I like that. That kind of sounds like I'm not a huge. I just got the game, but it kind of reminds me of Mass Effect a little bit.
So, but the Proxima Centauri, Proxima Station, the 5 aliens I've had 5 dogs, and they all have very different personalities. So the 5 alien races are based on my 5 dogs.
Nice.
So I'm like, well, hotel. It's going to have to be cozy because I can't kill my dogs. So I have a cozy sci-fi, which I didn't ever see me doing that, but there you
Yeah.
are.
So Proxima Station is like a legit cozy sci-fi.
I start reading the definition of cozy, and they're like, well, if someone is fighting for their life, it's not cozy. I'm like, well, maybe I should just say it's light sci-fi then. So I don't know. It's definitely in that vein. I mean, it's going to be a no one dies sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be more just you're thrown into this alien celebration and you don't know how to act, and you don't want to start an interstellar war with races that race that can fly to Earth and back in no time.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be all just like social anxiety basically. I'm channeling my introvertedness, and I'm like, yes, everything that makes me socially anxious is going to happen here.
Yeah.
It's really autobiographical, kind of, except for aliens.
Yeah.
But
so what is where did you I don't know, where did the idea come from for Proxima Station?
I was just I was kicking around. I was writing a separate fantasy series because I like to start series. And it just wasn't going well. It wasn't going well. I'm like, I've written 40,000 words and I haven't killed anybody yet. What's wrong?
Mm-hmm.
How can I chew? I was like, I was not happy. And I was like, okay, maybe it just has to be light because that's what this is. But I don't know. I need something else as a palate cleanser. And I was like, I'm going to write a space thing. My dogs are the aliens. and I started writing it, and God, it's the easiest thing I've ever written because when I get to a scene, like, okay, they're in this situation, what will Grendel do? I'm like, I know what Grendel will do. She'll grab someone by the scruff of the neck and throw them against the wall until they stop acting stupid, because that's what the dog. I'm like, all the dogs I had 12 years or more with, so I'm like, I know exactly what they're going to do in every situation. I'm like, so there's never like, what can happen next? I'm like, I know what happens.
Yeah.
So, plus they're novellas, so they're only like 25 to 30,000 words.
Oh, okay.
Probably like 10 of them in the series. I know what the first 6 are, and then after that, I'm like, yeah, then I should get serious and start telling a overarching plot or something. So,
yeah.
So
this is going to be a novella. Are your other series, are they full on novels?
Yeah, they're all full on novels. Well, the problem I had with Becoming a Druid, the Pretanni novels, Grommy is an introvert who would likes nothing better than to hang out in the forest and turn into owls and talk to squirrels.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, great, it's going to end in all-out battle. You need to go to throne rooms and get kings angry so they'll start attacking one another. He's like, no, hang out in the forest. I'm like, but battles, death, destruction. This. He's like, nah. So the second book in the series is actually just a couple novellas from people who've met Grommy and didn't die. They get their own 150-page novella to flesh them out and bring the story forward, since Grommy is not going to go to, throne rooms and make kings angry. So the odd numbers are novels. The even numbers are novella collections. This one has 2. The fourth book, Desperate Dispatches, this has 4 novellas. Speak with Elders is, again, a novel, full-length novel. Mm-hmm. So it's I do not recommend this. I always write first-person present tense, which makes it really hard when you have an introvert who doesn't want to interact with people, because, you're either left with Greek tragedy, this amazing thing happened off stage, or, and that died out like 23 centuries ago. So, I'm like, or you just write novellas for side characters who will actually do the dirty work that, and Grommy will just come and go through and make all sorts of mistakes and make it harder than it needs to be, because that's who he is.
Yeah.
So, but I will say that Grommy is the most fun I ever have writing, because I'm like, okay, he's a stupid 20-year-old. What's he going to do in this situation? Is he really that dumb? I'm like, not only is he that dumb, but... And so, I mean, you get some wild scenes, like chapter 5 of Becoming a Druid. They burn down a mead hall, all because he was trying to impress a guy who said, "You don't know what you're doing." And it got so out of hand that the entire mead hall bent and burned down, and people were running for their lives on fire. And I'm like, yeah, that is my all-time favorite scene to ever write. And I had one book where he's like, that was not necessary. That whole thing, none of that was necessary. And I'm like, nope, it wasn't.
Those are the best scenes, though. It's like the most fun when it's not necessary. Totally outrageous.
So yeah, I absolutely love that. So yeah, I kind of have a type. When I did my novellas, I actually had a woman as my protagonist, which when I did it, like freaked me. I'm like, oh my god, am I going to alienate half of the people who read this? And then my buddy Rose like, oh no, women are like 70% of all the readers out there. You'll be alienating 70%, not just 50.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, thanks. But then you do it and you're like, you know what? Women are people too. Oddly enough, they have motivations and wants and needs. And yeah, I'm like, I was freaking myself out for no reason.
Yeah.
But since then I wrote 2 more novellas with women as main character and whatever.
Didn't notice any difference in the performance?
No, well, I will tell you, this book, the second book in the series, is my best writing I've ever done, and it's also my lowest rated book. So everyone else disagrees with me.
That's the way it goes. It's like with anything. Anything you put like a bunch of effort into, people are like, it doesn't do that well. And then something that you just kind of throw out there, don't really think about, just blows up at some scale.
Well, I mean, they went from a novel to a couple novellas, which are never as popular as novels. And the one novel is actually a villain protagonist, which I didn't know was a thing until after I'd written it. And someone's like, oh, this is a villain protagonist. I'm like, is that a thing? Let me look that up. I'm like, huh, look at that. That's what I did. Sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, the character is so very unlikable. I actually had one beta reader. She's like, there's a lot of comments in here. I'm yelling a lot, all caps. I want you to know your writing is good. I just really hated your character and I had to vent. And I'm like, well, if it caused you to do all that, I must have done something right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I can understand why it'll be my lowest rated, forever. Well, I don't know. I could always throw out something even worse, but personally, I think it's my best rating, but who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I like a good, the only thing I can think of that I've read that has like a villain protagonist would be like some Warhammer books. But other than that, yeah, that's a style I don't think I've read a lot of, but that's not, I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't work. I definitely read like villain POVs for sure. But yeah, I'd give it a try. I'm not against it.
He is a thoroughly despicable person.
Yeah, I could see like it'd be like, oh, this is good writing, but I freaking hate this guy. You gotta put your reader in a tough spot there. You're like rooting for like, I want this character to lose so bad.
My editor actually told me, he goes, if the next chapter this guy finds a knife in his jugular, I'm totally okay with that. And I'm like, okay, and you're the editor.
Oh, that's good stuff. So you write in third person, you said present tense? Like on everything? Oh, first person?
First person, yeah. Bo Kelly always laughs at me because when I never thought I could be a writer. I mean, I didn't even take English 101 or 102 in college.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was 46, I was like, I'm going to try to write a book because why not?
Yeah.
And so before I did my research, which was I looked on the internet and they said, all the kids these days are reading first person present tense. Third person is going the way of the dodo. If you want to write, you should do first person present tense. And since it was one article on the internet, we know it has to be true. So I'm like, okay, first person present tense it is. And I liked the immediacy because, I mean, you are in the back of his skull. You can only see what he sees. It's great because you can mislead the reader so easily because, well, he didn't see that. He didn't know that. So, you can always be surprised and you can make just about anything happen and just be like, well, he didn't look that direction. He didn't see. And the Desperate Dispatches, I have the guy, he gets a statuette that he can throw and call the name and an ostrich appears. And then he has his dog that keeps trying to fight with the ostrich, and he's in a city trying to assassinate somebody, and the ostrich and the dog are fighting one. I'm like, it's ridiculous.
That's in Protector, Pretanni.
That's actually in the fourth book in Desperate Dispatches.
uh,
And I will tell you, this book, the dragon, he appears for all about 5 pages. But I did so many Comic Cons, and people were like, "Do you have dragons in your book?" And I didn't have no plans for a dragon. I was like, you know what? I'm putting a dragon in, if only for a couple pages, because I'm putting it on the cover so people. And every time when people come by, they're like, "Can I get this book?" I'm like, "Well, it's the 4th book in a series, so if you'd like to buy all 4, absolutely." But yeah, that was just because everyone kept saying, "Are there dragons in your work?" And I'm like, "No, it was a conscious effort not to have them." But I got asked so many times, I'm like, "Fine, I'm putting a dragon in there, but only for like 5 pages."
Yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of dragons. I read the Aragon series in high school and stuff, but I didn't know that was like a requirement that apparently a lot of readers have at like cons and stuff. I could see it. I mean, dragons are rad. Don't get me wrong. I love me a good dragon, but there's plenty of fantasy stories out there that I've read that don't have any dragons that are top notch.
Yeah. I went to an authors convention, and they're by far the most wildly popular panel discussion they had was, "Dragons are just giant cats with wings. Discuss." And it was so popular, they brought it back the next year, and they put it in the big hall so that they could have 200 people in there. And I'm like, I don't like cats, and I'm kind of like, dragons. And they've been overdone. I don't need to do dragons.
Yeah.
But you need to do dragons. So
I like your solution though. That's really like the 4th book. You just put a little bit in there so you can have an excuse to put it on the cover, and then you end up selling a whole series. I love that strategy.
There was going to be a dragon in the 7th book, like the last 20 pages or so. Mm-hmm. A dragon's going to come in like for the ending, and it makes sense, and it's not just. But anyway, I was like, yeah, I can't tell them, read 6 books and then 3/4 of the last book, and then you'll see a dragon.
Yeah.
For like 2 pages. So I was like, okay, so yeah, I shoehorned this one in, and then the guy who does covers, I'm like, "Draw me a dragon." He's like, "All right, a dragon."
Yeah, I'm not like I don't really like D&D style dragons. Like they're just too powerful and like almost godlike. I think when I like. I don't know. I guess like people take a twist on a dragon, or like come up with like some kind of a, some original idea of what a dragon is. I like that. But I mean, I like the Aragon books, but I've matured. I guess I don't know. Kind of left it behind. Although I am actually right now reading it's like the spin-off book in that series called Murtog. But I don't know. Like I read the there's like a trilogy. There's a ton of Driss books, but I read a certain trilogy called the Hunter's Blade trilogy, and I wasn't just I don't know. Maybe it's just the D&D world. I just wasn't a huge fan. I know it's probably sacrilege in fantasy and tabletop circles to say that I wasn't crazy about Driss books, but yeah, I don't know. I like Palanini's dragons better than D&D dragons for sure.
Yeah. I read the first trilogy of Driz books. I'm like, they're okay. I mean, they're not anything special. And then I'm like, how many books are in this series now?
So many.
I'm good. I read the first 3. I'm good. Don't need any more.
Yeah, it's like superhero fantasy. Like he's like, I mean, I get it. They got all the magic items and stuff, but he's like way too powerful, and like makes the enemies like pointless. Like just killing droves of orcs.
Does he still have the panther statuette that he throws in it? Yeah.
In the Hunter's Blade trilogy, yeah, he definitely has it.
Because that's where I got my idea of. I'm like, I'm going to do it, but my character is going to get an ostrich.
Yeah.
Because I want an ostrich running around in England, because that just makes me smile.
Yeah. Is that where it's set? Is it set in England?
It's set in England, like about 300 or so BC, which was cool. Interesting because I was like, okay, so they don't really have stone buildings. The Romans haven't come yet, so it's thatched huts, wattle and daub, that sort of thing. So that's why the mead hall burns down, because it's all wattle and daub and thatch, and so the fire reaches. Yeah, but yeah, and then I was like, early Iron Age, so swords are very rare because that's a lot of metal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more daggers or spears or bow and arrow sort of thing.
Or like clubs, maybe like some stone tools,
Yeah.
maybe.
And then just to give myself a challenge, I decided my druids are like, well, metal is like raping the world. We will refuse to use any metal of any kind
Mm-hmm.
ever. I'm like, well, great. Now they don't have coins to pay for anything. So how do they eat unless, how do they hunt? So then it's like, well, they change into animals and they hunt that way. They're kind of like the priests and the judges. So they get, alms given to them because they do a service for, I'm like, yeah, this whole no metal thing, it really, I did not realize what a life it was going to take on of its own. Okay, how does it function then if they can't have metal and they're the more or less the thought leaders of the society?
Mm-hmm.
So that, but I did so much research because I'm a chemist in real life, so I like research.
Mm-hmm.
I researched the Celtic calendar, which the day starts at nightfall. At sunset is when the next day starts. But you think, oh, okay, no problem. So then I start putting what day it was because he had so many days to complete his quest.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, shit, they're eating dinner. What month is it? When does it get dark? Is it, which day is it? And I just had to, and then I'd make a change and I had to go back and oh my God. I spent a good week of effort just trying to make sure the dates are right. And not a single soul has ever said, oh, hey, I'm glad you have the dates in front of every single chapter.
I really loved your attention to detail to the Celtic calendar.
Things you learn, because then after that, I'm like, yeah, I'm never doing that again. So it's like, you have to be done by this time. It's like, but we're not going to keep the dates. We're not going to, we're just going to be like, and some time passed, and now they're in a rush. But oh my, I had a spreadsheet with our calendar, their calendar, because theirs is a lunar calendar, and oh my God, I'm like, okay, what day is it? And like I said, at least a week of work just to get those stupid dates on the front of every chapter, and not a soul has told me one way or the other they liked it or didn't or thought it was a bother. So I'm like, there's effort I don't need to put in.
Yeah, I've definitely read a lot of books that have just like the date and time or like the location markers, and I almost never read those. I just go straight into like, what character am I with? And usually, the narrative or whatever, the prose pretty much explains where I'm at and what time it is. So yeah, I don't know. It's just not a habit of mine to actually read that little blurb at the beginning of the chapter.
So yeah, I have this day, 16 days until Samhain, and so you can kind of get the countdown because I don't expect you to actually learn the Celtic calendar and find out, oh wait, how many days does he have?
Right.
There's only one person dumb enough to do that.
Yeah, I will say I do like it as much as I don't read it when I'm reading. I do like it in audiobooks. Like when I hear the narrator say it, I don't know. I kind of like that framing or setup or whatever the word is for it. But are any of your things done in audio or?
The first 3 fantasy books are all on audio. And the best choice I made in all of my writing career is I got a guy from England, from Bristol, to be the narrator.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, okay, give me a name list and the pronunciation. I'm like, well, I can tell you how to pronounce them, but you're in Southwest England where the story takes place, so you know better than me.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, yeah, sure, I can do that. And sure enough, I have the Grommy crosses a river. It's spelled Fowey. It's pronounced Foy. I would never have known this.
Yeah.
I'm like, River Fowey. And I've had a couple of people in Britain like, hey, thank you. You got the names right. Thank goodness for that. And I'm like, it wasn't me. It had nothing to do with me. I just happened to get a killer narrator who is from the area and knew.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I remember one time I was in Shannon, Ireland, and I was just like talking with some people at the bar there, and they were like, we're just BSing, and they write something down. Like, I think they wrote their name down for me, and I went to go like read it, and I think the name was Sive, and I couldn't even tell you how it was spelled, but it did not look like the word Sive. I could tell you that. I was like, what the heck? Is it English? I can't tell. We're speaking English, but that does not look like an English word to me. I'm sure it's probably Gaelic or something.
Yeah, I worked with a couple people from English people before, and I always tell them, it's like, you murder the president's English. And wow, do they get upset when I say that.
The president's English. Oh, nice.
That and ask them how long they microwave their water for when they make tea. These are the things that um,
Oh, that's good stuff. Is your in your I don't know if you want to focus on talking about any one particular series, but I was curious with your fantasy series. Is your magic like what? I guess what style is the magic? Is it very like pervasive and powerful, or is it kind of like mysterious and like ritualistic?
so before I started writing, there were 5 schools of magic, and I had to be like, okay, we can't have one that's more powerful than the rest, or else why would anyone do the others?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to say, like, okay, if you can do this, and this is like, the druids can't handle metal in any way, shape, or form. They can't do their magic if they have metal on them. And then another group, they can summon demons, and the only way to kill the demons is with iron weapons, which druids can't have.
Yeah.
So so I kind of had to be like, okay, but then the demons can't cross water, so and I just so I sat there and I literally had a spreadsheet because, again, I like spreadsheets. And I'm like, okay, we have to make sure that all these, they can do something, but they have a weakness, so that there's never, So yeah, like there's mind controlling people, but there's limits to what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
The druids can turn into animals. Some of them can control elements and make like golems out of earth or stone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But all druids can do all of them. They can, like Grami is one of the best people at anamorphing, but he can't do elemental command that at all. And weather magic is kind of like everyone would love to be able to do it, but no one really can, or only a very few can. And Grami does it once and nearly dies because he exerts all his power to pull the clouds over.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's kind of, yeah, I got the demon summoners. I got the people who can read minds and can change, take over your body. Then there's the ones, they basically make runes and they just lob it and say the word and then a fireball appears. But so it's kind of like everyone can do something, but no one is omnipotent.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, the druids typically, it's more nature based. They can talk to animals. They can turn into animals, elements, weather. Nature's friend.
So are the demon summoners, are they considered druids, or are they like necromancers or something?
They're demon summoners. They were eventually, one day I will write it. All the magic came from North Africa,
Mm-hmm.
like from the desert, and it kind of just radiated. And the people there, they don't differentiate between the magics. It's just, I need to summon a demon. Oh, I need to turn into an owl. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then it like went away. People focus on specialties or whatever. So the demon summoners got kicked out because they were calling too many demons and causing too much trouble. So they went to Guernsey and what's the other island? Anyway, a couple islands off the coast of France, and that's where they were. And then they decided they need more lands. So Jersey, that's it, Guernsey and Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved north, and of course the druids are always like trying to tell the petty kings, hey, these invaders have landed. They have their cities now. Let's push them out. And they're like, well, I could do that, but that guy over there, his grandfather insulted my grandmother, many moons ago. So I'd rather just take my people and go fight amongst ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the druids are, trying to hurt the cats. And let's push the people off the island who don't belong here. And they're like, nah, we'd rather fight amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
So
that's a very relatable theme. I think anybody from any time period could probably relate to that.
Yeah.
Tim McKay, I've heard good things about Murtaugh, and I like the series, but it feels too long ago to bother going back to it. Yeah, man, I think I read all the books when they came out, so it's been a long time for me as well. But honestly, a lot of it kind of came right back to me, and it is good so far. So I do recommend Murtaugh. Side tangent. So I'm guessing like there's different. Sounds like the Demon Hunters are a different faction, and are they the antagonists?
So there's 3 quote unquote villains on the island. You got the demon summoners, you got the mind control people, and you got the people who used to be druids, but now they just make runes and throw them and get their fireballs and lightning bolts or whatever. And they've all made a little beachhead on the island, and the Celtic petty kings are all fighting each other instead. So they're all kind of enemies, and one will be the ultimate enemy they end up fighting, and the others will resolve one way or another. But yeah, I mean, book one, you're dealing with the mind controllers. In book two, you're dealing with the demon hunters or the demon summoners. And they go to Ireland, and you find out that the druids there don't like the druids in England, so they don't talk and, try to hamstring each other. The basics.
Yeah. With your Proxima Station, with your different alien breeds, which one of your dogs is which alien breed, and what kind of breed was the dog? And what's the personality trait?
Okay, so the first dog I ever had was Grendel. She was
great name.
Well, I mean, it was a female, so but I named her Grendel. She was half pit bull and half Australian cattle dog. And when I got my second dog, Buddy, I went to the pound, see if they're compatible, and the woman just leans over and goes, "Your dog is a bitch in every sense of the word." And I'm like, "Yes, she is." And she's bigger and stronger and meaner. So, I mean, I can't remember how many times I'd sit in the house and all of a sudden I'd hear Buddy go, "Yip," and he just start run away. And I'm like, what the hell happened there? What got into him? I mean, he's always a little crazy. And the one time I just happened to be getting up off the computer, I was going into the hallway and I saw Grendel grab him by the scruff of the neck, slammed him against the wall. And then he's like, and then ran away. I'm like, oh. Every time I hear him do that, that's just Grendel, body checking him into the wall. I'm like, okay. I mean, he was schizophrenic when I got him, but now I know why he hasn't got any better. So Grendel is 9 foot tall, and she's more enigmatic. She's usually gives one word answers and would just rather stare at you silently rather than answer your question.
Mm-hmm.
And so no one knows what to make of her. And you don't find out till later that it's all the other aliens defer to them because they're bigger, stronger, and meaner. Mm-hmm. Buddy was the smallest dog I ever had. He's only 45 pounds. The other ones are all 65, 70 pounds. So he never had a chance with Grendel. He was never hungry. So Buddy, what I have there, they have a giant head, like the Green Man you see and so when they run, their head pulls themselves down. They actually just tumble, do forward somersaults. And so they just lean into that. So that they have compound eyes on the side of their head. And I'm like, you know what? This is when they go down the hallway tumbling, they map the whole thing in 3D. And they have their noses inside their mouth so they can sample the air at different levels. And so they can do a scent and visual mapping of everything as so they sound, spastic and crazy, but, they actually are, there's a method to the madness.
That sounds hilarious. Is there a name for the species?
They're the wet nibs.
I like that. It sounds funny.
Grendel's, her name is the Yeti because she was a big white dog. And so the thing is that, we can't pronounce them with the human tongue what their race is called, so we call them the Yeti because they're really tall and white.
Yeah.
Then Crichton, I did him dirty. He was a basset hound. And so he's basically an upright slug. And they are bureaucrats, and they are passionate about paperwork. And so he is always, let's fill out forms. And the guy before my protagonist got there told him everyone on Earth reveres the ID-10T form. You need to ask my next guy about the ID-10T form. And they tell him, and he's kind of laughing. He's like, no one else was laughing. Oh God, they took this serious. And he's like, So yeah, that's the bureaucrat. Shadows are Shadows, my dog. He's the only one I still have left. He's 14 now, but he's what is he now? North Carolina breed plot hound. That's what he is. And I did not know it at the time, or I probably wouldn't have accepted him, but they were bred to hunt raccoons. So he has killed probably about 30 to 40 possums in the 14 years I've had him.
Jeez.
And I have a doggy door going out to my backyard, so he brings them all in and leaves them in my front room.
Gross.
He's killed other animals, but possums are, his specialty. I always tell people there's a local extinction event every summer in this area because he kills every single possum. I have fruit trees in my backyard. They come to eat the fruit. He kills them, puts them on. I'm like, I could just cut down the fruit trees and solve the problem, but
What state do you live in?
Virginia.
Virginia. My buddy lives in Virginia. My old Navy buddy. And
Oh,
Elkton, I believe, is where he lives.
Elton. Is that in the west part of the state?
I don't. It's a small town. That's all I know. I don't think it's very big.
So, and then the last one is Calliope. She's one of the Errati, because I couldn't think of a name. So just that sounds, but she was always would cling to me. If I went to a different room, she had to go to another room and just lay down within 3 feet of me always. So she's very clingy. She always fought with Shadow, and they're about the same size. So she could give as much as she took.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, so then, Shadow and Calliope are always going to be, kind of fighting one another, or at least sparring. And she's kind of clingy, and and so I got the first one where he just meets her, like he gets on the station. It's like, okay, you got 10 minutes before you go in and you meet one of each of these races. Go figure them out. And he's like, but wait, what? And he's like, no time for that. So they just push him in. He's like, hi. And then the next 5 books are going to be, he's going to go on like a one-on-one mission with each of the aliens as I weave in like a plot to the series eventually. But yeah, that at the end, he's like, you got to keep this secret. They're like, we will, but now you have to go on do something with us of our choice. And you have to, and he's like, great. He's an anthropologist. So he's like, score, but what are they going to make me do? So like Shadow, his race, they're gladiatorial. They like combat, since Shadow just like to kill everything. So yeah, he's going to go to the gladiatorial arena, and he's an anthropologist. He got his PhD in anthropology. He's like, what do I know about weapons? So cool. Sure, I can tell you about how they made them, but how they use them, I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be more just kind of humorous. And he's always going to be like, "Oh shit, what do I do now?"
What did you say? Penelope? Calliope?
Calliope.
Oh, okay. What does her race look like? Are they just like really like huggy, touchy feely kind of critters?
So she was weird. She had the body shape of like a lab, but she had the coloration of a boxer. Mm-hmm. So she had like the white going down and the white chest. So I was like, the colors look dead on a boxer, but she has a lab body.
Yeah, she had like a long snout, like a lab.
Yeah. And she really liked to eat a lot. So that's going to work its way in there, of course, too. That she's going to be like but then she fights with Shadow all the time, so she never got fat because she had to stick up for herself. So, so. That's the hardest one for me. I'm like, how do you do clingy and not make it boring? You can only hang on someone for so long before you're like, okay, let's just deep six these people. This one because she's annoying.
Yeah.
So that's when I'm kind of like, okay, I got to work on that one to make it interesting. But yeah, the rest of them. Oh, she speaks in couplets.
What does that mean?
So 2 lines of poetry that rhyme.
Okay.
So
oh god.
Yeah. So when she talks, it's 2 lines and they rhyme. And I actually had one beta reader. She's like, well, yeah, I really liked it, except for none of the couplets rhymed, at least not for me. But then I'm from Ireland, so we may just pronounce things differently.
I'm like, that's funny.
Pretty much that is true.
So how does the language work? Like, does he have like some kind of neural implant that lets them understand their language, or?
So that is what I ended up doing, because at first all the aliens have it, and that's how he can understand that they can. And then in book 2, the first chapter, he's going to get an implant so that he can understand them. And I didn't plan on it because I'd never had Dachshunds in my life, but I was talking to one guy's like, hey, yeah, I'm doing this. He's like, oh my God, can I be in that? Can I just be one of those wiener dogs? And I'm like, they're not actually dogs. They're all aliens. And I never had a Dachshund. And he's like, oh, I'm like, fine. I'm going to introduce 2 Dachshunds into it. And yes, Sebastian, you can be one of them. And I'm like, but and so they end up getting the ability to talk as well. So now I have Dachshunds, and their 25-word vocabulary, and they're going to be speaking now too, but they can't pronounce big words. So like Sebastian becomes Seabass because, and when they say like victory, they're like victory. So yeah.
So are they actual Dachshunds, or are they just like
they're actual Dachshunds because nice. Then it was in my first book. It got scrubbed. I need to put it back in there somewhere because he tries to explain dogs and they're pets and you take care of them and because they can't take care of themselves and they're like humans. And they basically say that humans are like their petting zoo. And, oh, look at these guys. They can't even, get to the fourth planet in their solar system. So, they basically say, yeah, we think of you as being like a petting zoo. And it's funny that you have your own animals that, meet that criteria.
Yeah.
And so then, of course, they give them the implants and then that gets old. So then they're going to have, my nephew is actually a medical doctor. So I text him like, okay, Johnny, what would throw me some medical terms out here? They're going to take a Dachshund, they're going to do surgery, they're going to make his skull 3 times as big as it was and give him some synthetic hormones to make the brain grow bigger so he can actually talk in sentences instead of, just shouting, dig, food. And he's like, we don't actually do that, Uncle Mike. I'm like, I understand that. But give me, and he's like, the cranioscopy, or I don't know, he wrote it, it's still on my phone. He texted me back. I'm like, great. Yeah, I'll throw some medical jargon in there that I don't understand, and that'll explain it away.
Yeah, I tried to do that with my wife. I was like trying to write like a short story, and I was like, I can't remember what it was, but I was trying to get her to give me, because she's a physician assistant. I was like, can you give me some like jargon? She's like, it doesn't work like that. I'm like, I know it doesn't work like that, but like, if I wanted to make something fake based off of that, what would I use? She's like, but it doesn't work like that. I'm like, okay, I give up.
My nephew, because the one time I was like, Johnny, this guy needs to get hurt. He needs to get, so he can't walk, so he has to drag himself off the battlefield. He has to go like 60 feet. He has to leave a blood trail, but he doesn't die, so he can't bleed out. Where does he get cut so this happens? Does he just get hamstrung? He's like, what does that mean? I'm like, you don't know what hamstrung means? You're a doctor. I'm like, they cut the back of the calves. He goes, oh, yeah, that's fine. You wouldn't hit an artery there. So, yeah, he would definitely bleed out like 60 feet, depending on how long. And I'm like, okay, thank you. He's like, again, we try to heal people, Uncle Mike. We don't actually try to injure them.
He's like, I don't have these stats for you. We never tried that.
I'm like, well, if you become an author, guess what? You will start hurting fictional people.
Yeah. I know. I always see like authors talk about like their Google searches. Like if the FBI got a hold of their Google history, they'd be like, how far could a human go with his calves cut open, crawling before they bleed out?
So I got a nephew who's a doctor. So I just text him, and he's like, "Really, Uncle Mike? Okay." But yeah. So, oh man.
So with the Proxima Station, so this first one's a novella. Like with your Protector series, are you gonna? I don't know if you said it already, but are you gonna switch back and forth with novels with this series as well?
No, the Proxima, they're going to be all novellas.
Okay.
So, and I'm figuring like 10 or 12 should be. I know what the first 6 novellas are, and that'll like complete the first story arc. And then I kind of know what the second story arc is going to be, but I don't really know what other than this thing is going to happen, and that's going to be the topic of the next several novellas. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how many or anything really. I'm like, if I can get the first 6 written, I'm good.
Yeah.
I can worry about 7 once, I'm on like 5 and be like, okay, how do I introduce, the next problem? So,
yeah.
But yeah, I know what the first 6 are going to be for this one. So if I can write those first 6, and I should have the second one out in November or December, I'm hoping. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm going to, again, try to publish 3 books this year. I have not published any yet. It's June. So.
You got half the year left. You're golden.
Yeah.
So have you been? You're independent. Are you like looking at all to try and like get picked up like TradPub, or you love being indie?
God no. I want to write the stories I want to write. Mm-hmm. It helps that I have a full-time job and I'm not trying. I don't want to quit. So I'm like, you know what? I'm doing this. I'm writing stories that I enjoy. That some other people actually enjoy too, which is enough. So I want control.
Yeah.
I pick my covers. I just who is going to be able to do? Hey, I want the even number of books to be novella collections.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what trade publisher is ever going to do that?
Yeah.
So not that I recommend that. Now I would next time I'm not going to have a introvert to who's so like no, I'm not leaving the forest. I'm going to have they're going to have to be a little more outgoing than that.
Mm-hmm.
Lessons learned. But I mean it's I like it now because I know who Grommy is, and like on our channel we tell people they go into the bald dome, we put their main character there and say, okay, here's a new surrounding, here's a new adversary. This is what he's got. How does he react? And some people were like, I don't know. He looks at the wolf. Is it looking back at him? And I'm like, they're just hesitant. And I'm like, man, if I was doing that with Grommy, I'm like, this is what he's going to do. He's going to do A, he's going to do B, he's going to look. Can he do this? No. I mean, I know him inside and out now. And that's why Proxima is so easy because my dogs are, the main characters basically.
Yeah.
So once you get to that point where you actually know your character and you're like, it sort of writes itself. You're like, well, in this situation, there's really only one choice that he would do. So,
Yeah, I agree on that 100% because like I remember in college I did like a writing assignment where like we read a bunch of short stories and then there was an assignment where it was like a dialogue between two characters. So like I had already like read these characters, like I didn't have to create them. So it was a way easier just to like take characters that were already established and then just this is how they would talk versus like creating them from scratch.
Yeah.
Question though, so you said the Bald Dome?
Yeah.
Is that your show?
Our channel is Bald and Balding.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're always like, are you ready to enter the Bald Dome?
Nice. Is that like, so you guys have like guest writers come on and you kind of like, is that just like an exercise? Like, okay, you put your protagonist in here and then give them a scenario.
So our show is basically, okay, we're here. Let's talk about your book. So random question number one. And then 15 minutes, I'm like, hey, what's the title of your book? When's it coming out? Who's, and then we'll go off on another wild tangent. And the 35-minute mark, be like, tell us about your main character. We should probably talk about your book now. And then around 45 minutes, we're like, okay, the Bald Dome, take your main character. We're going to put him in here. He's going to have an adversary. He always gets a potion that is 100% effective, but he doesn't know what it does. So use it or not. And then we're like, and it's all ridiculous. And I'm telling look, I just told ChatGPT to come up with 20 different scenarios. So there's lots and lots of adjectives. It's not the greatest, but you know what? I didn't have to work for it. Mm-hmm. So, you've gone to the Crystal Caverns and, this is your advocate. There's a rhinoceros there. We don't know how the rhinoceros got in the caverns, but there you are. You're standing face to face with a rhino. You have a potion and 3 tallow candles. Go. So
that sounds fun.
Yeah. So yeah, and some people are very hesitant. And one guy was there. He had a club and he was fighting a griffin. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you're dead. But you could tell that he just really liked his main character and he wasn't going to he's like, no, so he wins because he clubs the griffin to death. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. But then you get, one guy, he's like, okay, my guy's a mage. First thing, fireball. He's casting a fireball. And I'm like, all right, take the bull by the horns. Let's go. So it's always fun when they're decisive and they, one battle ended up as a tea party because they kept swinging each other and missing. So after 4 straight misses, like, we're just going to sit down and have tea since we can't hurt each other. Like, okay.
Nice.
So you never know what's going to happen. And some people really embrace it and are, creative on the spot. And then others are just kind of like, they either like their character too much and are afraid they're going to get, or, they're like, I don't know, what are the rules? I'm like, you're telling us the story. You make up the story. But yeah. So you never know what you're going to get. And one guy charmed a polar bear and said, this is my new horse.
That's a good mount.
So, yeah. So you just never know. But yeah, we interview 6 to 10 authors a month.
Oh, you guys are busy.
Yeah. Well, last summer we did 45 shows in the summer, so June, July, and August. And I told Ro, I was like, we are never doing that many again. That was every other day for 3 months.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I like you, but not that much. I need to see less of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's like for me, like I had a newborn. So we have 3 kids, and one of them is a newborn. So I was like, it's getting hard to keep up with all these interviews, even just doing one a week.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's helpful. Ro and I are both, we're old. We have nothing else going on in our lives now. He has 2 kids. One's in college. One's graduated college. Mm-hmm. I never married. I have no wife, kids. I have 1 dog. That's it. So I have free time.
Yeah. I was gonna ask your back wall there. I'm digging all those weapons. I can't tell. Are any of them like would I recognize them from any movies or?
Not necessarily from movies. So I'll tell you this one here, the Gladius. Mm-hmm. I was at a Comic-Con selling my books, and the guy across from me had like 3 tables, and he had like 60 swords all laid out. He just goes, "Hey, I'll give you any sword you want if you give me your 4 books in hardback." And I'm like, done. So I went over and I'm talking to him, and the damn fool, he had sharpened every single sword. So they're at a Comic-Con where you have awkward nerds dressed in, awkward costumes. All of his weapons were sharp. I mean, he's like, look at this French rapier. See how? And I mean, it was perfectly balanced.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, bring it. I'm like, no, I will cut off an ear. Maybe mine, maybe yours. I don't know. I'm like, no, do not let me handle these. But yeah, that's sharpened. I could, go cut wood with it.
I didn't know you could have like real weapons at cons. I thought they had to be like fake.
You can't have them sharpened at least. But the damn fool, every single one of his swords was sharpened. So I got that, and I was like, well, what am I going to do with just 1 sword? So then it kind of grew, and then I kind of ran out of wall space, so I kind of stopped. I mean, I say that, but I do have the sword or the shield that I have no place to put. So it's on the floor for now until I figure out something.
Tim McKay says, drink the fizzy potion.
Always. We always try to tell people to drink the fizzy potion. It almost never helps them.
So you said you're a chemist as your day job?
Yep.
Or I guess it's your career, not really. Anyway, do you have any, like, as a chemist, like, do you ever do like hard sci-fi? Is any of you writing hard sci-fi? So
I will tell you this. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get the science right. I mean, I kind of fudged with the whole engines can go faster. It's not faster than light, but I didn't want them to be 3 months getting from the moon to Mars. So I'm like, okay, it takes a week. Mm-hmm. They have antimatter engines. They figured this out sometime in the next 200 years. But otherwise, I'm like, I want the science to be right. And I had Ryan Patrick was on the show. He writes hard sci-fi, and he's an aeronautical engineer, so he gets it right. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Mike's book, it's hard-ish science fiction. I mean, it's mostly right. And I'm like, what's wrong? What did I get wrong? He goes, no, it's fine. I'm like, no, you can't say that. I'm not wrong. I was going for accurate. He's like, no, it's fine. And he still to this day has not told me. I'm like, as far as I know, everything I put in there is my understanding. I mean, I got straight C's in physics, so I'm not surprised if there's something wrong. But I'm like, but my understanding is that's all should be realistic. And he's like, it's hard-ish. So, and he's never told me what I'm like, ugh. I'm like, and he's like, nah, don't worry about it. I'm like, you can't say that.
Yeah. Well, do you have any advice for someone who is not scientifically educated or inclined or whatever, if they want to try and maybe not be hard sci-fi, but just like make sure that if they have science in there, it sounds legit? Like, what's a good tool they could use to kind of spot check their research?
I mean, you could do Wikipedia, which for hard science is going to pretty much be right. I mean, Wikipedia is Wikipedia, but if you're talking hard science, it's math based. It's not like you can say, well, my opinion is, well, the math says otherwise. We don't care about your opinion. So
Yeah.
you can check it there. But I would say if you're writing sci-fi and you're not, up on physics, just, you're telling the story. Focus on what you want to focus on. Engines, everyone knows how an engine works. If you don't say it's dilithium crystals, nobody's going to ask. That's been so long established that you don't have to. Just, try your best to get it right, but don't worry too much, obsess about it. And I mean, I think you're fine. I mean, how many people are like working like, I'm going to get out my physics book, I'm going to do the math. It's, I mean, the number of people, I'm like, if they come and say, hey, this is wrong, like, you got me. Congratulations.
Yeah.
If you want to burn my book, I'll sell you a bunch and you can burn a lot of them all at once and really make a statement. I'll sell you as many as you want.
Yeah. Oh, man. Let's see, 8:00. Let me see here. We've got some time for a few more questions. I'm sorry. I usually go about an hour just because I got this bedtime for the kiddos. Yeah, I guess so. You already kind of talked about your plan for the series and where some of your ideas came from. I guess what is your writing process? Are you an outliner? Are you a pantser? Do you blend it?
I started off, I was very much a plotter, and I like these are my 28 chapters, and this is what's going. And then I started writing, and Grommy would just be like, "Nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go to the throne room. I'm going to hang out in the forest." And so I was like, "Well, okay, throw that away." So now I'm pretty much 5 to 7. I call them signposts. Like these are going to happen in the story. I order them in a way that seems logical, and then I'm like, okay, I'll start writing. I have to get to signpost 1, and go. And then once I get there, I'm like, okay, I have to get to 2. How does this happen? Kind of brainstorm. And then I just sort of write. So it's kind of, I always know what I'm writing towards, but making an outline is just a waste of time anymore. So I don't bother.
Yeah, it's like a very, very, very loose outline, kind of like you say, just signposts.
Because once your characters, you start arguing with your characters, that's when you're like, okay, I got a story now, because these are fully formed people now instead of automatons.
Yeah.
So so I mean, it doesn't make sense to outline, but so much.
And do you like with having to work? Do you write every day? Do you write just a couple times a week? Or what time of day do you write?
Oh, I write at night always. And if I spent as much time writing as I spent feeling guilty about not writing, I'd publish way more books.
Yeah.
But I mean, now and I always tell people the very hardest part for me is the first draft.
Yeah.
That is going to take 50 to 60% of the entire time to publish a book is spent doing that, because I'm staring at a blank page going, what interesting happens next? I don't know. And no one can tell me. So, so that to me, I mean, when we get to editing, I love to edit, because I'm like, that sentence was abhorrent. I'll make it less so. Now my story is better. And so I don't mind editing. The problem is I will just keep editing. So I have to be like, you know what? It's good. Leave it alone. But yeah, I love editing. Because every time, like, I just made the story better. Yay.
Yeah.
But that first draft, all that kills me. And there's people like E.L. Montague who writes 2,000 words a day on 3 different stories. Guy drives me nuts. He's published 6 books now in under a year. But and I'm like, I can't do that. For me, the first draft is by far the hardest.
Yeah.
So.
At what point in your writing process do you send it out for beta readers and alpha readers to take a look at? Like first draft, send it out, or what?
So it depends. This book, which was actually the first one I wrote, but the 5th book I published, I wrote it and rewrote it 7 times before someone finally read it. And there's another author and I were doing each other's book, critiquing it chapter by chapter, and I still kind of feel bad. He was Canadian. And, it got to chapter 9 of his. I'm like, well, here's another thing that doesn't make sense about your story structure. This plot doesn't make sense because, X, Y, Z. And he's like, okay, you know what? I need to rethink my whole plot. So I'm not going to send you anything else, because I mean, I don't mean to be mean, but I'm very direct. So I'm like, this did not make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
This is wrong. This cannot be true because you contradict this. And and people just don't like that. So especially maybe. But he's like, no, but I'll read all of yours. So I was like, score. He's going to read all of my chapters, and I only had to read 12 of his.
Nice.
But and he's Canadian, so he's complimentary after every chapter. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Make a few changes. I'm publishing this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he's finished, he goes, okay, well, now that I'm finished, just a few comments. This is pretty good for a very early draft, but I think you have a lot of work to do. And I was like, I was ready to publish next week. And I was like, so that was like seventh time. I'm like, you know what? Set that down. Need to clear my head, see if I can write fantasy. And I wrote 4 fantasy books. And then I came back and published this. And I rewrote this 6 more times because when I started, I was truly abhorrent because I never took English in college. So I had, multiple tenses in every paragraph and all sorts of things. Like, actually, this was when I was thinking, I was like, hey, this is my book I'm going to publish. So, in a binder. Yeah. And I'm like, I gave this out to like 4 or 5 people to read, and they were all friends, and they all said, yeah, it's really good. They lied. They lied through their teeth. And I got all of them back except for one. I'm like, please tell me you threw that away or burned it, or if not, that you'll return it to me so I can burn it. So there is at most 2 copies of my very first draft, and I have one of them, and the other one may or may not exist. And I'm like, you're just waiting. If I should ever become famous, you're going to be like, look how bad he was.
Yeah. That'd be worth some money. I can guarantee you that. Tim McKay says, you crushed a Canadian. How could you?
You've seen our show, Tim.
Just an interesting point on like how you were like started on the sci-fi, then you switched over to fantasy. Because I've noticed with me, like when I'm trying to write something, I was started off trying to write fantasy, and then I've noticed that if I switched over because I was just struggling with it, and I switched over to write like urban fantasy or something more contemporary that's set in like a more like modern setting. It just can't, or even like a future setting like sci-fi, came a lot easier to me than trying to write fantasy. So I don't know if it's just the way my brain works. I just don't like, as much as I love to read fantasy, I just don't talk or think in like in a medieval way. Like I'm not good at talking like that, or being in that kind of setting. So I think for me, like that, those other genres come easier to me to write.
I mean, I think definitely urban fantasy because it's modern. So what the Portland, Oregon looks like. If you want to set it there, you don't have to worry about what would he do if he turned down this street. It's like, well, let me get my Google Maps out and see. You know. So I actually, for my cities in and for the fantasy, I actually took Roman cities like Camlanidum and the different cities that were there, and they have maps of them. And I've taken those maps and I've given people like, okay, this was the Roman city, but we're going to make it, Celtic now. So, these things have to be not stone walls, but, thatched roof. But, I take a real map and then I just repurpose it to my end because I wasn't alive in the medieval ages.
Yeah.
If some of the people I work with would probably think I was because, medieval ages is the 70s to them. But yeah, I think, urban is much easier. Even on Mars, I got a little bit of trouble. It's like, okay, what is life like there in a city 200 years in the future on a planet that doesn't have oxygen naturally?
Yeah.
So, you just kind of, there's opal mines in Australia. Cooper Petty is the name of the city, and most of the people live underground because it gets to be like 125 during the day. So they all live underground, and they have pictures of and the rocks are all like orangish. I'm like, oh, so this is just like Mars. Mm-hmm. Great. So I got all these pictures. I'm like, yes, this is what my Martian city looks like. They all live inside the sides of craters, and so you just kind of find something that you can hang your hat on, and okay, this is what I'm looking at, and then I describe what I'm looking at.
Yeah. I think too, like it's also easier for like to write in like urban fantasy because not only do you can write about things you already know, but like the readers know it. Like like I could just say a car drove by. Like you don't have to explain what a car looks like or all these things. So the reader knows all these things that you don't have to really waste your time explaining or describing. which is nice.
Yeah, I go. I like I said, I like to research. So I had the one. My editor's like, okay, you need to stop because they encountered a hedgehog, and I was like, but hedgehog is an Anglo-Saxon word. I'm doing the Celts. Anglo-Saxons didn't come to like 500 AD, so I'm 800. So I can't say hedgehog. And so I was like, well, it was a bristled pig that lived in the. I can't say hedge. What did the Celtic word for? He's like, I like the original, being trying to be accurate, but just call it damn hedgehog and be done with it. And I'm like, okay, fine. I mean, at one point I was like, all the French loan words wouldn't have been in there at the time. Maybe I should not use any French derived words. And I was like, oh God, no, I don't. I get that so wrong anyway. I couldn't even do a paragraph without. I was like, no, just you kind of get twitchy eyed. You're like, okay, back away from the computer, take a breath.
Yeah.
Do not set yourself up for the impossible.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I was just listening to like a podcast about like Thales, like the old pre-Socratic philosopher, and how he believed that like magnets were alive because they can move. And like on face value, you're like, oh, what an idiot. He thinks that they're alive, but like, they kind of explain it like back then, like they didn't have as many words as we have now. So not even just that like it's a different word. They just didn't have a word for it. So like alive kind of just meant a kind of a broader term than I guess we would look at it now. It has a more specific, like it's living meaning. So
Yeah.
just kind of got to let roll the dice and let it go.
Yeah. So I was thinking I had one author I was talking to because I know she's written the first book in 3 different series now. And I was like, so how many books do you have in your mind that you want to write? And we started comparing. And I was like, well, let's see, 10 novellas. Pretanni's going to be 7. Haley's going to be 5. The other series is going to be 5. So that's 17 books, 10 to 12 novellas. And then I have other ideas. I'm like, yeah, I'm looking at 30, 40 books that I want to write, and I've written 5. And I'm like, I'm going to turn 55 this year. I better get moving. So, but yeah, I mean, the idea is just live in your mind. And, I always like, okay, I have notes. Let's see. Yes. Okay. And I'll sit down. I'll just start writing a totally different story.
Yeah.
And you just kind of read like, oh yeah, it all comes back. It's in there somewhere. You can retrieve it, and then you just. So hopefully we'll get these finished.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know like what your plans are for retirement, but that's always something you could also look at when you retire.
So I'm actually looking to retire in 2 years, and then author who we interviewed, James Maxey. He's written 25 books because he's been at it for 20 some odd years. Mm-hmm. But he told me, he goes, Mike, if you're going to do the Comic-Con circuit, it's fairly easy to make $40,000 to $70,000 a month or a year. He goes, you'll never make $100,000. I mean, there's just not enough cons and not enough time, and you're selling each book. And he goes, but if you want to make 40 to 70, I'm like, well, when I'm retired, I'll have some income, but if I can just do this and 40 is fine, that'd be plenty.
Yeah.
So actually, what I started is because I shared a table with him, and he had 25 books and I had 5, and he had like 2,000 in sales and I had 700, and I was like, well, he has 5 times as many books, so. And I started thinking, it's like, well, why don't I sell other indie authors' books, and then I can have 25, 60, whatever I want, So I actually started talking to other indie authors, and I said, sell me your book wholesale, then I'll resell it. You'll get a new fan. I'll make a couple bucks. You'll make a couple bucks. And so I started doing that this year, and I'm like doubling my sales.
Nice.
I'm selling less of my book, but I'm doubling my sales overall. So It makes it much more palatable. And I was talking to a guy who's actually written 72 books, and he's like, well, for now, since you're just a new author, I'm like, I've written 5 books. I'm a new author. He's like, well, I've written 72. I'm like, okay, fair. He goes, but when you get up there, 13, 15, 17, you'll probably stop carrying other people's books and just carry your own. I'm like, yeah, when I get to 17 books published, I'll also be 70. So,
Yeah. Is there a lot of other people that do that? Is it like a common practice?
No one else that I know. like I said, I did a show with him, and had 3 times the sales. And I was like, well, I'd love to have 25 books. And I was like, well, it'll take me 10 years to get there. I'm like, I can't really shortcut this anyway. And I was like, well, why don't I sell other indie authors? Because we do 10 interviews a month. We've interviewed over 250 people in 2 years. I'm like, there's a lot of authors that, I know, and I've read some of their books, and, so I kind of like, okay, I can sell your books. And I reach out and say, will you sell them to me wholesale so I can resell them? And no one's told me no.
Mm-hmm.
Several people have asked me, how much do we have to pay you for this? And I'm like, no. You make money on the sales, because, if I sell all of your books and I want more, I want you to actually be in a hurry to, get them sent to me to replace them. So, but yeah, I mean, and the other thing I've learned with any author interviews we've done and reading their books is there's so much of that person in the book. I mean, it's never autobiographical, but I mean, just like we interviewed Dave Lawson, and then I read his book, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like I'm talking to Dave. I mean, just the characters, the way they interact. And, I laughed out loud a couple times reading his book. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, because if you talk to Dave, I mean, Wistful by Joe Byrne, the man loves puns and dad jokes. Guess what's all throughout his book?
Nice.
I mean, it's hysterical. And he has space bears that sound like Russians. And I think book 3 that has the guy fighting a dinosaur on the cover. It's just ridiculous. And if you talk to him at any point in time, you're like, yeah, okay, that's Joe.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just, once you know them, you're like, oh my God, I can't read this book without thinking, you've bled on all these pages in some form or fashion. So it's kind of neat that way too.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, but I tend to not read so much. I tend to do audiobooks. So,
it's actually, I think the last 3 books I've read have all been audiobooks. I upgraded to the Audible where you get the free credit. And then they had a huge sale going on some Warhammer books. So I got an audiobook for like $4. So yeah, I've just been knocking out. I kind of took a pause on reading Murtaugh. Although I do read, I'm reading a Raconteur Press anthology right now, because that's what I do for my book club that I stream on Mondays. But that's the one thing I am actually reading. But yeah, for the most part, I've just been knocking out audiobooks lately. Because, throw them in while for me, I'm a stay-at-home dad, so while I'm doing chores around the house and stuff, that's what I listen to.
Yep. The other nice thing about, like, Haley is that since I know these authors, each chapter I have, like, a couple, like, 5 lines, like an excerpt from Mars Today, just to throw little world-building tidbits in there that, a 17-year-old is never going to talk about, the primaries for prime minister, So, just to kind of add little world-building tidbits here and there.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, who said this? And so I just start using all the authors that I know. I start using their names and putting it in there. Like,
yeah. I love those Easter eggs.
So there's like 32 different people whose names I used.
Nice.
And I talked to one, Anna Ellis. I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to use you. You're going to be a prime minister candidate. One of the 3 finalists. You're going to lose, but do you mind if I use your name? And she's like, Mike, I was in your first book, Haley Trail. I'm like, you were? She goes, yeah. I'm like, really? I don't remember. And then so she posted it, and I was like, oh, sure enough. And I was like, well, guess what? That's what brought you to fame there. So now this is like, 40 years later. So now you're going to be 70 years old in my book, and you're going to run for president or prime minister, and you're going to lose. But she goes, well, that makes sense. I would never win an election. I'm like, okay, well, good. So, yeah. But that's always fun to put people's names in there. Actually, the villain for my Proxima series is Tim Wolf is my villain for the whole series. So
that's fun. Yeah, I love reading that stuff. Like, I remember I was reading some Land and Sea books, and I would see like Rick Partlow or like not necessarily the full name, but like I knew it was like Rick Partlow or Jason Cordova, Larry Correa. Like they, Blaine Pardoll likes to slip a lot of his author friends into his stuff too.
Yep. So yeah, that's always fun.
Yeah. Let's see here. 8:19. I think I'm gonna have to go here pretty soon because like I said, I got to get the kiddos to bed and help the wifey out. But dude, thanks. I'm glad that the technology decided to. As far as your internet, I didn't have any issues with you dropping out. You didn't sound laggy to me at all. So
Cool.
Thank goodness.
Hey. Yeah.
Finally made it. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on. I love these opportunities to get a chance to talk to authors. I'm not published. I'm still working, trying to figure out this whole thing. But yeah, I just love getting the opportunity to talk to other authors, and it's great that you guys reach out and want to come on. I'm just a little nobody dude who likes to read books, that you'd come on my channel and talk to me. So I appreciate it.
So yeah, when your book is published, let us know. We like to do, we call our show a book and a beverage, or sometimes it's a book launch and a beverage.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you want to come on and talk about your book, that's kind of what we do. And we consciously try to do indie authors like Larry Correa. We're never going to have on our show because he does not need all the oomph
Yeah.
all the volume can give him,
Yeah.
which is none. So yeah, we tended to go for the newer authors. You have one book out, two books out, something like that, and and then we'd like, hey, book launch, call us up. We'll put you on the schedule. You can come talk about book 2 when it comes out. So don't be a stranger. If you want to come on before and talk about something in particular, we can do. Every so often we do that. I had one show where I had 3 space aeronautical engineers on, and we talked about writing sci-fi and actually getting the science right.
That's awesome.
And they all kind of like, it's like, I mean, you're not an aeronautical engineer. Why are you going to try to be one? Just write an interesting story. That was the gist of it. But we had an hour and 20 minutes to talk about it to come to that conclusion. So
yeah, I always like to hear people that are experts in any field talk about their field. It's always cool to hear.
We're going to have one on world building, and one of the authors, Dave Dobson, that we've had on before, he's a retired geology professor.
Nice.
I'm like, so we're talking world building, like, how do we construct it from the core
From
up?
the core up. Yeah.
So
nice. I actually have one more question before we hop off. So I gotta say, out of all your books, your Haley's Traveler definitely seems like the most in my wheelhouse as a reader. And you said book 2, you're in the process of writing it, or it's written, editing?
So what happened was I was writing book 2 to Haley, and I got it finished. I sent it out to beta readers, and I was like, okay, that's going to take a month. So when I'm waiting, I said, let's just play with the Proxima Station story. And I got that to the point, it's like, this is ready for beta readers, but all my beta readers are reading Haley too. And so I put out like, please help me. I need more beta readers. I have a novella now and a novel, both at the beta reading stage. And I got all of it back, and I looked at it as like, Proxima Station is close to being publishable. So I'm going to focus on that first. I was going to publish Haley 2 in July, and I was like, you know what? Publish the novella. That gives you a little more breathing room to get Haley 2 right.
Mm-hmm.
So Haley 2 has been written, rewritten. Beta readers have given me feedback. I've incorporated that into it. So that is close. I will probably have it finished. I'm hoping by the end of July when I launch Proxima Station, but you don't want to have like books released like a week within from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll probably sit on it until September and then launch it then.
Cool.
And then since I'll be sitting on it, I'll have all that time. So I'll write Proxima Station 2 and hopefully have that out this year too. But yeah, Haley 2 is written, rewritten, sent out to beta readers. Their comments have been, I've kind of put them in, and now I just have to go through and make sure my grammar makes it look like I'm at least monolingual before I give it to my editor.
Yeah.
But yeah, once I'm at this stage, I'll send it to my editor. He'll give me his feedback. I'll fix it. Then the last thing I do is I put Microsoft Word, the text to speech, and I listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you catch so much. It's just like no one talks that way. But when you read it, you kind of gloss over it. It's like wonderful weather we're obtaining. And you're like, no one says that. So that's the last thing I'll do. Then I'll send it to my proofreader. I'll get it back. And this time I'm not going to make any changes after the proofreader other than, that, and then it's done. So I should have Haley by the end of next month. Should be ready to go. It'll probably sit on a couple months before I launch it. But yeah, that's ready. I can tell you what happens in Haley 3. And it's going to be a 5-book series. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you what happens in 4 and kind of what happens in 5. There's going to be a nuclear detonation. in the series. So
Sweet. Yeah, I don't have to. I've been trying to read a lot of book ones this year. Like, not maybe not like finishing a lot of series, but I just wanted to like, as a reader, just scoop up and kind of put my toes in a lot of different, series and see what I liked, what I didn't like. So I'm going to have to give Haley's Traveler a read.
well, yeah, I'll be happy to send you a copy.
Yeah, and I'll have to we'll DM each other and see about me coming on your show. That sounds like fun.
Yep, love to have you.
Cool.
Probably, I mean, we're scheduled through June, but July is pretty wide open, and anytime after that. So
Sweet. Well, sounds good, man. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good night.
Yep, you too.
Yeah, later.
Bye.